Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The night was quiet on the edge of the colony world. The air carried the soft rustle of leaves, and the distant calls of night creatures echoed through the forest. John, a human who had chosen to live far from the crowded cities, sat outside his small wooden cabin. His dog Rex lay near his feet, ears twitching at every sound. John enjoyed this peace, away from the noise of the world. But that night, something felt different. A faint cry drifted through the darkness. It was not the call of any animal he knew. It was high, trembling, and filled with fear. Rex lifted his head, growling low in his throat. John frowned. He had heard many sounds in the wild before, but this one was strange, almost like the cry of a child without waiting. John grabbed a small lantern and his old rifle. He moved carefully into the woods. Rex padded beside him. The cry came again, softer now, as if whoever was making it was growing weaker. John followed the sound through tall grass and thick branches, until he reached a clearing. There, under the pale glow of alien plants, he saw her, a small figure, curled up against a fallen tree. Her skin was faintly blue, glowing softly under the moonlight. Her hair was silver and tangled. Her arms clutched around her knees as she shook. She looked no older than 7 or 8 years by human standards. Her large eyes opened slowly when she sensed John's presence, and for a moment he froze. This was no human child. The girl blinked at him, fear and pain in her gaze. She tried to speak, but her voice was broken. The words were not human. Yet somehow John felt the meaning. She was lost, hungry, and scared. Rex moved forward, sniffing the air. Instead of barking, the dog whined softly, wagging his tail as if to say the child was no threat. That was enough for John. He lowered his rifle and slowly knelt down. "It's all right," he whispered, keeping his voice gentle. "I won't hurt you." The girl trembled, but did not run. John reached into his pack and pulled out a small ration bar. He broke it into pieces and offered it to her. At first, she hesitated. Then, slowly, she stretched out her thin hand and took it. She nibbled on the food like a starving bird, her glowing eyes never leaving his face. Something stirred in John's chest. He had lived alone for years, keeping to himself. But looking at this fragile child, he felt a deep pull of responsibility. Whoever she was, whatever she was, she needed help. He gently wrapped his coat around her small shoulders. She shivered less under the warmth. With a small nod, John lifted her into his arms. She weighed almost nothing. Her skin was cool to the touch, and as he carried her back through the forest, he could feel her heartbeat fluttering like a frightened bird. Back at the cabin, John laid her on a blanket near the fire. Rex curled beside her protectively. John gave her water, and she drank eagerly. After a while, her eyes began to close, and she drifted into sleep. For the first time that night, John had a moment to breathe. He stared at the alien child lying in his home, her small chest rising and falling with each breath. He knew this was dangerous. If the authorities discovered her, they might take her away, or worse. But deep inside, he could not bring himself to abandon her. As the flames flickered, John noticed something strange. On her arm, half hidden under the coat, a faint glow appeared. It was a mark, a pattern almost like a symbol. The light pulsed slowly, as if alive. John leaned closer, his brow furrowed. This was no ordinary child. Something about her was different, something powerful. The girl stirred in her sleep, whispering words in her unknown tongue. Her face twisted as if caught in a nightmare. John could not understand, but he felt the weight of it. It was a warning, a shadow hanging over them. Rex growled suddenly, ears pointed toward the forest. John tensed. The night was silent again. Too silent. He gripped his rifle, staring out the window. Whatever this child had brought into his life, it was only the beginning. The mark on her arm glowed brighter, casting strange shapes on the cabin walls. John's grip on the rifle tightened. He realized he had not just found a lost child. He had uncovered a mystery, one that might change everything. The girl murmured once more, And this time, John thought he caught the faint sound of words that almost made sense. 3 days. His heart pounded. He did not know what that meant, but he was certain of one thing. Something or someone was coming, and he had only 3 days before it arrived. Asterisk, the small cabin was silent except for the soft crackle of the fire. The alien girl slept wrapped in John's coat, her breathing slow and uneven. Rex rested beside her like a guardian, his tail flicking each time the wind pressed against the wooden walls. John sat in his chair, staring at the strange glow that pulsed from the mark on her arm. It was faint now, but it carried a rhythm like the beat of a hidden heart. He rubbed his temples, trying to understand what had just entered his life. He had always chosen peace, a quiet life away from the colonies and their endless politics. Yet in one night, his world had shifted. A child, an alien child, now lay under his roof, and she carried secrets he could not explain. As the fire dimmed, a sound broke the silence. The girl whispered, her voice thin but sharp. The words were not human, but they curled through the air like shadows. John leaned forward, listening, his chest tightened. The voice did not sound like that of a child. It was deeper, layered, like two voices speaking at once. Rex's ears shot up, and he let out a low growl. The girl stirred, her glowing eyes opening halfway. She looked at John with fear and urgency. She spoke again, but this time, he thought he caught something familiar among the alien words. 3 days. The same phrase as before, the same warning. John swallowed hard. What was coming in 3 days? And why did she seem so certain? When morning arrived, the forest around the cabin felt heavier. The birds that usually filled the air with song were silent. Even the wind seemed to carry a weight. John prepared breakfast, simple bread and soup, and placed a bowl before the girl. She ate slowly, watching him with wide, unblinking eyes. She tried to form words, her voice breaking. He heard fragments, pieces of meaning that struggled to cross the barrier of language. Run. Danger, they come, she said. Her hand gripped his wrist, her small fingers cold but strong. John nodded slowly. Who was coming? He asked. She shook her head, frustration in her gaze. Then, as if searching for a way to make him understand, she drew shapes in the ash near the fire. 2 tall figures with long arms and glowing marks like hers. Beside them, she drew herself, smaller, alone. Then she pointed outside to the forest. Her voice trembled. They find. John's gut tightened. She was being hunted. Whoever those figures were, they wanted her back. And if they were anything like her, they were not ordinary. That night, the whispers returned. John woke to the sound of her speaking in her sleep. Her voice carried across the room, low and unsettling. He felt the hair on his arms rise. He could not understand the words, but they filled the cabin with a sense of dread. Like a warning carried on the wind, Rex barked suddenly, sharp and loud. John leapt to his feet, rifle in hand. He scanned the window, but the darkness revealed nothing. Only the faint shimmer of distant lights deep in the forest. His heart pounded. Were those just fireflies or something else watching from the trees? He turned back to the girl. Her eyes were open now, glowing faintly. She whispered one more word, this time clear enough for him to hear. Protect. The weight of the word struck him harder than he expected. She was not only warning him, she was asking him, pleading with him, and against his better judgment, John found himself nodding. I will, he said softly. I'll protect you. The following day, John began preparing. He checked his supplies, ammo, food, and tools. He reinforced the cabin door, set traps along the paths near the forest edge. Rex followed him loyally, sensing his master's unease. The girl watched him silently, her expression unreadable, but sometimes, when she thought he wasn't looking, she smiled faintly. That night, as the second day began to fade, John sat by the fire with his rifle across his lap. He tried to stay awake, but exhaustion weighed on him. He closed his eyes only for a moment. He was woken by the sound of the girl's voice. not in a whisper this time, but in a tone filled with fear. Her eyes were wide, staring at the window. Her lips moved quickly, the same phrase again and again. They. Here. They. Here. John jumped to his feet, moving to the window. At first he saw nothing, but then movement. Shadows slipped between the trees, tall and graceful. Too tall to be human. Rex barked furiously, his teeth bared. The girl clutched John's arm, shaking. 3 days. They come 3 days. And then silence. The shadows melted back into the forest, leaving only darkness. John stood frozen, his rifle tight in his hands. His heart hammered against his ribs. They weren't attacking, not yet, but they were watching, waiting. The girl pressed her forehead against his sleeve, whispering in a trembling voice, "Soon, soon." And John knew then, with a cold certainty, that the clock was already ticking. 3 days, she had said. 3 days before the storm broke. 3 days before his quiet life would be gone forever. Asterisk. The forest outside the cabin felt heavier with every passing hour. The sky hung low with gray clouds, and even the wind carried an edge of warning. John had lived through storms before, but this one felt different. It was not the kind of storm that came with rain or thunder. It was a storm of silence, of unseen eyes, of danger creeping closer with every heartbeat. The alien girl sat near the fire, her knees pulled to her chest. She was quiet, but her glowing eyes followed John wherever he moved. Each time he checked the locks, or sharpened a blade, or loaded his rifle, she watched. It was as if she knew why he was preparing, and she carried the same fear he tried to hide. Rex never left her side. The dog growled at shadows that were not there, sometimes pacing near the door, as if he expected it to open at any moment. John trusted the instincts of his dog, and Rex's unease only deepened his own. For 2 days John prepared. He checked his traps, moved supplies into safer corners, and tested the old cum device. It crackled with static but offered no signal strong enough to reach the colony. He was on his own. At night, he barely slept. The girl whispered in her strange tongue. Her words flowed like rivers, sometimes soft and sorrowful, sometimes sharp and panicked. John could not understand, but the meaning pressed against his mind all the same. She was afraid of them, the ones coming, and she knew they were close. On the morning of the 3rd day, the air grew still. The forest no longer whispered. The usual chorus of creatures was gone. Even the insects had vanished. John felt it in his bones. The waiting was almost over. The girl tried to speak again. She pressed her hand against his chest, looking into his eyes with desperation. They find soon, she managed. John crouched down and nodded. "I know," he said softly, though his throat was dry. "But they won't take you. Not while I'm still breathing." Her small fingers clutched his sleeve, and for the first time she whispered a word he understood clearly. Protector. The sound of it struck him deeply. He had never asked to be anyone's protector. He had lived his life alone, pushing away bonds and burdens. Yet this fragile child had named him, claimed him, and in that moment, he accepted it. He would protect her, no matter the cost. That afternoon, he walked the perimeter of the cabin. His traps were set, sharpened stakes hidden under leaves, alarms made from metal scraps ready to ring. If anything crossed them, he knew it might not be enough, but it gave him time. Time was the one thing he needed. As night fell, the storm truly began. Not of rain or wind, but of presence. The shadows of the trees seemed to stretch too far. The air felt thick, heavy with unseen weight. Rex barked furiously, his fur standing on end. John lifted his rifle and scanned the tree line. His heart pounded. His mind screamed at him to run, but he held his ground. The girl clung to his coat, her glowing eyes wide with fear. Then, just as the moon broke through the clouds, John saw them, 2 tall figures moving between the trees. Their steps were slow, deliberate. Their eyes glowed faintly, like embers in the dark. They were not rushing. They were not hunting. They were waiting. John's stomach turned. He understood now why she had whispered 3 days. It was not only a warning, it was a countdown. They had been watching, waiting for the moment to appear. The figures did not attack. Instead, they stood at a distance, staring, their glowing eyes fixed on the cabin. The girl whimpered and buried her face against John's chest. "No. No," she whispered. "Not go. Not go." John tightened his grip on the rifle. His voice came out low but steady. "You're safe here. He'll have to walk over my body first." Hours dragged by. The figures never left the tree line. They stood like statues, shadows carved from night. The storm was not one of action, but of pressure, of knowing something inevitable was coming. John could barely breathe, but he refused to step away. Finally, as dawn began to rise, the figures slipped back into the forest. The silence remained, but their absence only deepened the dread. They had shown themselves. They had promised their presence, and they would return. The girl sat trembling by the fire, her eyes filled with tears. She whispered again, this time clearer than ever. 3 days. Over. John understood then. The waiting was done. The storm had arrived. What came next would not be silence. It would be a test, and he was ready, or at least, he had no choice but to be ready. The morning sun broke through the clouds, but its light did little to chase away the unease that hung over the cabin. John had stayed awake most of the night, his rifle always close, his eyes fixed on the tree line. The 2 figures he had seen were gone now, but he knew they had not left. For good, they were waiting, circling, testing his resolve. The girl sat quietly at the table, her silver hair falling across her face. She ate the bread John placed before her, but her hands trembled. Every few minutes her gaze drifted to the door, as if she could sense what was coming. Rex paced the room, ears pricked, growling at nothing. The dog's instincts had never been wrong. John tried to steady his nerves. He cleaned his rifle, checked the traps again, and forced himself to eat. He knew what the girl had said. 3 days, and the 3rd day had passed. Now came the moment he had been preparing for. The knock came suddenly. It was loud, sharp, and heavy. The sound echoed through the cabin like a hammer striking steel. Rex barked furiously, leaping toward the door. The girl gasped and ran to John, clutching his arm, her glowing eyes wide with terror. John's heart pounded, but his hands were steady as he raised his rifle. He stepped slowly toward the door. The knock came again, louder this time. Then a voice smooth, calm, and alien drifted through the wood. "Human, we come for what belongs to us." John's stomach twisted. The voice was female, but it carried a weight, like someone speaking from deep within stone. He glanced at the girl. She shook her head violently, whispering, "No. Not them. Don't trust. Don't." John's hand tightened on the rifle. He pulled the door open. 2 alien women stood outside, tall and radiant under the pale morning light. Their skin shimmered faintly, as if woven with silver threads. Their eyes glowed the same way the girl's did, though brighter, fiercer. They wore long cloaks that rippled, though there was no wind, and their faces carried calm, cold smiles. "Good morning, human," one of them said. Her voice was smooth, but sharp beneath the surface. "You have something of ours." John stood in the doorway, blocking their view. "She's not yours," he said firmly. "She's just a child." The taller woman tilted her head, her eyes narrowing. "A child? Yes, but dangerous, too dangerous for you to protect." She took a step forward, but John raised the rifle. The click of the safety echoed in the air. "That's close enough," John said. His voice was steady, though his chest burned with tension. The second woman spoke now. Her tone was softer, almost kind. "We do not wish harm, human. Give her to us, and we will leave you in peace." Behind John, the girl cried out. She ran forward and clutched his arm. "No!" she screamed, her voice breaking. "They lie. Not safe, not safe." The women's smiles faltered, and for a brief moment, their eyes darkened. The taller one hissed softly, She speaks against us, but she does not know the truth. She belongs with us, human, not with you." John's jaw tightened. He looked down at the girl clinging to him, her small hands shaking. She had trusted him. She had called him protector. He could not betray that. "She stays here," he said, "with me." The taller woman's smile returned, but it was no longer calm. It was sharp, cruel. "Do you even know what she is, human? Do you know the danger you invite into your home?" "I don't care," John answered. "All I know is she's a child, and she's afraid of you." The second woman sighed, her glowing eyes narrowing. "So stubborn, like all of your kind. You never understand when to kneel," Rex barked, baring his teeth at them. The dog sensed the tension building. The air itself seemed to thicken, humming faintly with energy. John's grip on the rifle tightened. He could feel it in his bones. The storm was about to break. The taller woman leaned closer, her voice dropping into a hiss. "You will regret this choice, human," the girl screamed suddenly. "Don't trust. They kill. They kill." Her voice carried power, like an echo that shook the air. For a heartbeat, the two women's faces twisted, the calm masks cracking to reveal something darker beneath. Their eyes flared with energy, bright and unnatural. John aimed his rifle directly at the taller one's chest. His voice was low, dangerous. "I said she stays with me." For a long moment, the three of them stood frozen, the woman's glowing eyes locked on his, the girl clutching him like her life depended on it, Rex snarling at their feet. Then, slowly the women stepped back. Their smiles returned, though sharper now. "Very well, protector," the taller one said, mocking the word. "But remember this, keeping her will cost you everything." With that, they turned, their cloaks rippling as they walked away into the forest. Their glowing eyes lingered for one last moment before the trees swallowed them. John shut the door quickly, bolting it. His breath came heavy. The girl sobbed against his chest, whispering broken words. Rex whined and circled them. Restless, John stared at the fire, his rifle still in hand. He knew the truth now. They were not here to ask, they were here to take, and they would return. The storm had finally knocked at his door, and this time it would not be satisfied with words. The cabin was filled with silence long after the alien women vanished into the trees. John stood at the door, his hand still gripping the rifle so tightly his knuckles were white. The girl clung to his sleeve, her eyes glowing with fear. Rex paced back and forth, his growls low and constant, as if the scent of danger still lingered in the air. John finally lowered the rifle, but his chest was heavy. He knew this was only the beginning. The women had not left for good. They would return, not with calm voices and fake smiles, but with something far worse. The girl pulled at his sleeve, whispering, "Don't trust. Never." Her voice cracked, and she pressed her forehead against his arm. John gently patted her shoulder, trying to calm her trembling. "I won't," he said softly. "I promise. They won't take you." But even as he spoke, doubts gnawed at him. What had the taller woman meant? "Do you even know what she is?" The question echoed in his mind like thunder. John glanced at the girl, small and fragile, but with that strange glowing mark on her arm. He wanted to believe she was just a child, lost and afraid. But deep down, he knew there was more. That night, the storm deepened. Rain finally began to fall, slamming against the cabin roof. The sound should have been comforting, but instead it carried tension, like drums in the distance. The fire flickered low, casting long shadows across the walls. The girl tossed in her sleep, her voice breaking into whispers again. John leaned closer, trying to catch the words. This time they were clearer, fragments of her native tongue mixing with human words she struggled to form. Power, hidden, they fear, they kill. John felt a chill. Power. What kind of power could a child hold that made those women desperate enough to come to his door? He rubbed his eyes. He had wanted a quiet life, far from war, politics, or mysteries, but now he was caught in something far bigger than himself. Near midnight, A sound cut through the rain, a voice, soft and sharp, carried from outside. John froze, his heart pounded. He moved to the window, keeping his lantern low. The two women stood at the edge of the clearing. The rain did not touch them. Their cloaks shimmered like mist. Their glowing eyes locked on the cabin. "Human," one of them called, her voice calm but filled with pressure. "Open the door, we mean no harm." John did not answer. His finger rested on the trigger. The second woman spoke now, her tone smooth as silk. "You are being deceived. She is not what you think. That mark on her arm is not a blessing, it is a curse. She will bring death to you, to your world." The girl whimpered in her sleep. Twisting as if she could hear them, John clenched his jaw. He looked at her glowing mark, still faint but alive with its strange pulse. "She is dangerous," the taller woman continued, her voice rising above the rain. "She was not abandoned, human. She was cast out. Her kind wanted her erased. Do you understand? Even her own people did not want her." The words sliced through John's thoughts. Could it be true? Had she been left to die because she was a threat? He shook his head. His gaze fell on the small child sleeping on his floor. She was frightened, weak, and yet she had clung to him, trusted him. John opened the window just enough to speak. His voice was rough. "Even if what you say is true, she's still a child. And I won't hand her over to strangers who come in the night." The taller woman's eyes narrowed. "You protect what you do not understand, foolish human." The second woman tilted her head, her smile returning. "You call yourself protector. But what will you do when her true nature awakens? Will you still keep her then?" The words chilled him, but John refused to falter. He slammed the window shut, bolting it tight. The rain poured harder, drowning out the sound of the women's voices. But John knew they were still out there, waiting. He sat near the fire with his rifle across his lap. Rex curled at his feet, growling softly in his sleep. The girl stirred, whispering again. Her voice was weak but filled with fear. "Don't believe lies." John closed his eyes. His doubts clawed at him, but he forced them down. He had made a choice. He would stand with her, no matter the truth. Hours later, as the storm eased, John thought he heard faint laughter carried on the wind. It was cold, mocking. He knew the women had not gone far. They were toying with him, breaking him down. He stared at the girl's glowing mark once more. The light pulsed stronger now, spreading across her skin like veins of fire. John's chest tightened. He remembered the women's words curse. Danger, erased, but when she woke, her small voice called to him, trembling but clear, "Protector." And in that moment, John pushed away the fear. He didn't care if she was curse or blessing. He didn't care if the women spoke truth or lies. She was under his roof, under his care, and he would not give her up, no matter the cost asterisk. The storm outside had slowed, but the tension inside the cabin only grew heavier. John sat near the fire with his rifle resting across his lap. His eyes were fixed on the door, his body aching from days without proper rest. The girl slept fitfully. Beside Rex, her glowing mark pulsing brighter with each passing hour, John knew it was only a matter of time before the women returned. They had tested him with words. They had tried to shake him with lies. But now their patience would be gone. The next time they came, it would not be with smiles. The first sign came just before dawn. Rex bolted upright, his fur bristling, a low growl vibrating in his throat. The girl stirred, whispering broken words. In her sleep, the glow from her arm flared, casting faint light across the wooden walls. Then a sharp crack outside. Like a tree splitting in half, John jumped to his feet, rifle ready. He moved to the window and froze. The two women were back, but this time they did not hide in shadows. They stood in the clearing, their cloaks gone, revealing tall forms wreathed in energy. Their skin glowed faintly, etched with the same patterns that burned on the girl's arm. Their eyes blazed like twin suns. Their voices carried across the clearing as if the air itself obeyed them. "Human," the taller one called, her voice layered with power. Defiance ends now. Give us the child. John raised his rifle. His hands trembled, but his voice did not. You'll have to go through me first. The second woman smiled coldly. So be it. The air crackled, and in the next instant, the clearing erupted with light. Energy surged from the women's hands, striking the ground near the cabin. The earth shook, windows rattled. Rex barked wildly. The girl screamed, clutching her glowing arm. John fired. The rifle's blast tore through the air. The taller woman staggered, but the wound closed instantly. Her body shimmering as the energy healed. She hissed, her eyes burning. Brighter. You fight with metal, she snarled. We fight with worlds. John ducked as a bolt of energy slammed against the cabin wall, splintering wood. Smoke filled the air. The women advanced, their steps slow but unstoppable. Stay. Down. John shouted at the girl. He darted across the room, firing again and again. Each shot slowed them, but nothing stopped them. The cabin walls cracked. Sparks rained down. Rex leapt forward, snarling at the intruders. His loyalty burned brighter than his fear. The second woman swung her arm, sending a wave of force across the room. John was thrown back, slamming into the table. Pain tore through his ribs. He struggled to rise, his rifle clattering to the floor. The taller woman stepped inside now, her presence filling the cabin like a storm. She looked at the girl, her voice low and commanding. Come, child. Your power belongs with us. The girl shook her head violently, tears streaming down her face. No. No, she cried. Her voice cracked but carried strength. I stay. With Protector. The woman's smile twisted into a snarl. Foolish, she hissed. She raised her hand to strike. Energy gathered, bright and deadly. But before the blow could fall, the girl screamed. Her mark flared like fire. Light poured from her arm, flooding the room in blinding brilliance. The air rippled. The ground shook. The women staggered back, shielding their faces. John shielded his eyes, his heart pounding. The girl's voice rose above the storm, not weak or trembling, but powerful, layered with echoes. Leave us, she cried. Her words struck the air like thunder. The blast of energy exploded outward. The cabin groaned. The forest trembled. The two women were hurled back into the clearing, their cloaks burning, their glowing eyes wide with shock. John gasped for breath, staring at the girl. She stood trembling, her small frame wreathed in light. The mark on her arm spread across her skin like veins of fire. Rex pressed close to her side, barking furiously, guarding her even in her transformation. The taller woman rose slowly, her eyes narrowing. So it is true, she whispered. Her power awakens. The second woman's voice was filled with fury. This is not the end, human. You cannot hold her. Her power will destroy you. They vanished into the shadows, their forms dissolving into the storm. The clearing fell silent, the energy fading. John lowered his rifle, his chest heaving. He looked at the girl, who collapsed to her knees. Light fading from her body, he rushed forward, catching her before she fell. Her eyes fluttered, her voice weak again. Protector, she whispered, before slipping into unconsciousness. John held her close, his heart racing. The women were not defeated. They would return stronger. But something else haunted him now. He had seen it with his own eyes. Her power was real, unstoppable, terrifying. She was no ordinary child. She was something far greater, something the women feared and desired, and now he realized, so did he. The clash had only begun. The war for her future, for her very soul, was still ahead. The cabin was quiet after the battle, but it was not the silence of peace. It was the silence of exhaustion, of fear, of questions that had no easy answers. Smoke curled from the broken walls where the women's power had struck. The air still hummed faintly, as if the world itself remembered the clash. John sat near the fire, his body aching. His ribs throbbed with pain from the blow, and his arm shook each time he tried to lift the rifle. Yet he stayed awake, his eyes locked on the girl who slept on a blanket beside Rex. She was pale now, The glow from her mark dim, her breathing steady but fragile. He replayed the moment in his mind again and again, the way she had stood, small and trembling, but with light pouring from her body like a star. The way her voice had thundered, forcing the women back. For a moment, she had not been a helpless child. She had been something more, something beyond human understanding, and that truth terrified him. The girl stirred in her sleep, whispering, "Protect her." The word was soft, innocent, fragile. John clenched his jaw. He could not abandon her now. Not after what they had faced together. She had chosen him, trusted him, and no matter what came next, he would stand by her. But the woman's words lingered. "Her power will destroy you." He glanced at her glowing mark, pulsing faintly like a hidden heartbeat. Was it a curse? A weapon? Or was it something even the women did not understand? Dawn crept slowly across the sky, painting the clearing in pale gold. The forest was silent again, but not safe. John stepped outside, rifle slung across his shoulder. The air smelled of rain and smoke. His traps had been shattered by the fight. The ground scorched. He scanned the trees, but there was no sign of the women, only the quiet weight of their promise. This is not the end. When he returned inside, the girl was awake. Her silver hair fell across her face, her glowing eyes filled with fear. She reached for him with trembling hands. "They come back," she whispered. "More, not too many." John crouched beside her. "How many?" he asked softly. She shook her head, unable to form the number. Instead, she drew shapes in the ash near the fire again. This time not two tall figures, but a circle of many, surrounding a single small figure. John's chest tightened. If two of them had been so powerful, how could he stand against more? The girl pressed her small hand against his chest, her voice soft but certain. "Together." John swallowed hard. He nodded slowly. "Together." The hours passed. He repaired what he could of the cabin, strengthening the door, setting new traps. Rex never left the girl's side, watching her with protective eyes. The bond between them had grown stronger, even deeper than John had expected. She trusted the dog as much as she trusted him. By evening, a strange calm fell over the forest. The storm clouds had passed, leaving the sky clear. Stars shimmered above, bright and endless. John stepped outside and looked at them, his heart heavy. He knew the women were right about one thing. This girl was not ordinary. She carried something vast within her, something that frightened even her own kind. He had no answers, only questions. But he also knew this: if the universe wanted to take her from him, it would have to fight him first. Inside, the girl watched him from the doorway. Her glowing eyes reflected the starlight. She whispered a single word, one that carried both hope and fear: family. The sound of it cut through John's chest. He turned, meeting her gaze. For the first time in years, he felt the weight of belonging, of responsibility that went beyond himself. He gave her a small nod. "Yes," he said. "Family." But even as he spoke, the forest stirred. A faint hum drifted through the trees. Low and growing, John stiffened, his rifle snapping back into his hands. Rex barked, his fur rising. The girl clutched the doorway, fear flashing in her glowing eyes. The hum grew louder, pulsing like the beat of a great engine. Shadows moved between the trees, not two this time, but many, tall figures, their glowing eyes piercing the dark. John's breath caught. He tightened his grip on the rifle. The girl pressed close to his side, whispering the same word again. "Together." The figures stopped at the edge of the clearing, silent, watching. Their presence filled the night with pressure. John's heart thundered. He knew this was no longer just about protecting the lost child. This was about defiance, about standing against forces greater than anything he had ever faced. He raised his rifle, his voice steady despite the fear burning in his chest. "If you want her," he called into the dark, "you'll have to go through me." The figures did not move. Their glowing eyes burned brighter. The air thickened, the storm waiting to break. The girl clung to his arm, her voice soft but fierce. "Protect her." John looked down at her, then back at the glowing eyes in the trees. For the first time, he felt not only fear, but something else: resolve. This was only the beginning. The fight for her future had just begun, and no matter how many came, he would not let her face it alone.